All right. Hello, Shane. It's a pleasure to meet you. How are you doing today?
Not bad, not bad.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. Um, Before we get into anything, tell me a little about yourself. Where do you live?
I live in the Central Florida area, so around like Orlando.
Okay. Yeah, and do you live in like an apartment or a house? Any roommates?
Yeah, I'm in an apartment just by myself, little studio.
Nice. That's awesome. Where do you work?
I work at like a defense contractor. I do like software engineering stuff.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. And I'm not sure if you've ever sought out counseling before. But I'd like to go over a few things before we begin. Pardon me if I'm looking over, but I just want to make sure that I'm going over this properly with you. Um, I know that there was a lot mentioned on your intake paperwork, but first I'd like to go over confidentiality. Everything that you say will be confidential, meaning everything that you say will stay between you and I. With the exception of two sessions, which I must record since I'm still a student and it's for the purposes of supervision. Um, and that way, my professor can evaluate me and make sure that you're getting the counseling that you deserve. Um, Also, if you're suicidal or planning on hurting others or engaging in child or elder abuse, I must break confidentiality to report any of that. Do you have any questions about that?
No,
No? Awesome. Great. With that being said, do you have any thoughts of killing yourself?
no, nothing like that.
No. Okay. And any thoughts of hurting others?
No, no. You know, sometimes people can be annoying, and you want to grab them and tell them to shut up, but that's about it. No actual serious thoughts there.
Sure, no serious thoughts. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, people can get under your skin sometimes, but I'm glad you have that filter.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, great. With those like formalities kind of out of the way, what brings you in today?
Well, I have problems anytime I try to drive. Basically,
Mhm.
I just driving's not necessarily the most relaxing thing in the world, but I like get super anxious about it, and
Mhm.
like even when I'm driving in a relatively chill area and not like on like a big highway or anything like that, I'm still like very anxious and very like hyper aware of like everything, and I can't really like ever multitask and like have a conversation if there's like a passenger in my car, or I can never really relax and just like listen to music or anything. I'm always just like super nervous constantly while I'm driving.
Yeah, would it be fair to say that it sounds like you're really on guard, like whenever you're driving, always vigilant of like what other drivers are doing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. And obviously you're supposed to kind of be that way when you're driving, but it's to like a really like extreme degree. Like I'm always worried about it, and like I can
Yeah.
never focus on anything else really.
And do you think not being able to focus on other things has like affected your driving?
Um, yeah, I mean sometimes like it's like if I'm driving to new places and like have like directions or whatever,
Mhm.
I might not like be able to like follow those directions, or like I said, if I have like passengers in my car and they're like trying to like just have casual conversation while we're driving, I'm not really able to like do that. I know most people like they like to listen to like podcasts or music and stuff while they're in the car. I'm not really able to enjoy like any of those things. uh
Sure.
and like I think I'm overly cautious like when it comes to driving,
Mhm.
which can be like problematic sometimes, like going too slow or too nervous to like make a turn or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you drive to work by chance?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I have to drive to work every day, and well, I get to work remote sometimes, so I guess I don't have to drive every day. But any day that I go into the office, yeah, is a driving day.
Sure. And here you are going to your defense contracting job and already amped up from the experience of driving.
Yeah,
That sounds pretty exhausting.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely not like a great way to start off the day
Right.
or end it, you know. Like yeah, it's I'd like to be able to focus more on like, you know, thinking about
Mhm.
work or like relaxing or whatever after it's done, but like I'm not really able to do that when I'm commuting.
Yeah. When you said that you're on guard, but also that you're anxious, do you have any, like, other than looking out for other cars on the road, or do you have any like physical symptoms of like, do your palms get sweaty or like do you get kind
Uh
of shaky?
yeah, a little bit. And like I can definitely feel like my heart rate like elevated a lot and
Yeah.
I feel like sort of like a tightness in like my arms and sort of like
Mm.
chest area, upper body, and like not like shaking, but like I'm just like a lot more like tensed up, and like almost like physical nervousness, you know, like
Yeah.
um yeah, some like sweaty palms, not overly so, thankfully, but yeah, they get a little moist sometimes.
Sure. Right. Um, yeah, I mean that that does tend to come with like heightened anxiety. And if you are on guard all the time when driving, that's bound to impact your day. Like you said, that's an exhausting experience, and um, you would like to wind down at the end of the day, or even be in a cool, calm, collected spot whenever you go into work. So I would like
Mm.
to work with you on that, but why do you think that is? Why do you think you're anxious whenever you're driving?
Um, well, I mean, I'm just worried about like what could happen, like if things go wrong. You know,
Mhm.
I was in a pretty like bad car accident when I was a kid,
Mhm.
and I saw and sort of dealt with the effects of that, you know. Thankfully, I was like okay,
Yeah,
you know, physically in the long term after that, but like uh it's not you know, it's a really bad experience for like a lot of reasons.
yeah,
You know, you have to deal with like the health effects and everything, and then you have to deal with the other people involved with the crash, which, you know, could be uh, a legal thing sometimes. And then
Mhm.
there's like the financial situation of like, well, your car might be totaled and now you need to buy a new car. And,
Yeah,
you know, it's just a lot of stress and a lot of things that I'm like worried about as I'm
yeah.
driving that like if something goes wrong, then you know, there's going to be a lot of like really bad stuff to have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a frightening or traumatic experience, and um, I am sorry that it still is affecting you. But if only if you're comfortable, would you mind if I asked a few more questions about the crash you experienced?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, how old were you when this happened?
I was like about 8.
8 years old?
Yeah, might have been a little later than that. Between like 8 and 10. I don't remember exactly.
Sure, kind of that like late childhood into your like getting closer to your teenage years.
Yeah, yeah, right before then, you know.
Yeah. Who's in the car with you?
It was me and my parents.
You and your parents. And, it must have been a pretty bad crash to be that memorable.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I mean, my mom was in the hospital for like a while after that.
Mhm.
Again, thankfully she ended up being okay, but that was like really scary.
Yeah,
And especially like seeing her getting taken away in like the ambulance after that, and then meanwhile I'm getting like checked out, and my dad and
yeah,
other people in the car accident, and then my mom's like in really bad shape.
right.
So that was really scary. Um, and then just the like I guess adrenaline that you get from it is like super just intense, and like
Yeah.
I just remember being very, very like uh, you know, freaked out, but then
Mhm.
also like worrying about my mom and like my dad and like everything else that was like going on around me too.
Yeah. Well, in following that line of logic of being concerned with your parents' well-being, um, were your parents kind of financially stable or well off whenever you were a kid, or were you part of a lower SES group?
Definitely like lower middle class. We were
Mhm.
we were okay, but like the car that we were in wasn't, a super nice car.
Right.
It worked fine and it got the job done.
Sure.
Um, and but we definitely didn't have, didn't there wasn't a lot of money, for sure. We were able to survive, but that was kind of it.
Right. And I imagine that was another stressor. Did your parents talk about worrying about financials after the car crash?
Yeah, for sure, especially involved with like the hospital bills, and then I
Mhm.
mean the car was having to buy the new car was actually uh sort of the least of their concerns with like the hospital bills, and then also like there was worry that they would be found at like fault for the accident, and then like
Mhm.
there were like going to be other bills from the damage and medical bills from the other people too. So there was like a lot of uh, you know definitely a lot of like worry and concern about that, and
Yeah.
it sort of was compounded on top of the fact that we're hoping that my mom's going to end up being okay.
Mhm.
Um, and then there was like that additional stress of all of that, plus like now we have to get a new car and that. So yeah, I definitely remember
Right.
that being a big stressor
Mhm.
on my dad, and then also my mom too.
Yeah. That that leads me to wonder, do you generally have financial worries today, or is it exclusive to automobile accidents?
um I mean, I have worries about finances in
Mhm.
today's day. Everything's so expensive now, and like I'd like to
Sure.
be able to afford a house and stuff like that. But in the software engineering field, obviously I'm paid like pretty well compared to the average, so like I'm doing okay, and those worries don't really stress me out. They're things that I think about and try to like plan for, but they don't really stress me out. I'd say like the car accident definitely stresses me out a lot more, because that would be like it could potentially be a really big financial burden just kind of sprung up all at once. And
Yeah.
I'm doing well, but I'm not doing well enough to be able to take that like tens of thousands, if not like at worst case hundreds of thousands, if medical bills become a big thing.
Yeah.
That's a much more serious concern and worry.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And it does sound like, you have a healthy dose of like nerves, or at least your fingers on the pulse of the economy, and that you want to maintain stability. Um,
Yeah.
So like a appropriate amount of worry given today's day and age.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always some stress involved with like finances and stuff, but it's usually like in most cases it's not like really a big deal, just something that's like kind of lightly on my mind.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to summarize some things that I've heard here today, because it sounds like you are anxious when driving, and that anxiety has a lot of physical strenuous symptoms, such as your palms sweating, heart racing, and then kind of racing thoughts when it comes to guarding yourself. You know, you're vigilant of other cars on the road, and you're going to work and you're exhausted, and you come back home, you have to drive back as well, and you wish that you could wind down, but you can't. And hold on. Sorry about the technical difficulties. But it sounds like after work, you wish you had the ability to wind down um, after work, and that you just can't. And you think a lot of this stems from this car crash that you experienced as between 8 and 10 year old, um, and that you had to be checked out by medical staff. You are probably scared of the physical repercussions of getting in a car crash, seeing your mom in the hospital. Must have been pretty traumatizing. Um, in addition to learning about liability, seeing who's liable for the crash and the financial repercussions that come with that and medical bills. Um, that's a pretty scary place to be in as a kid. And I would like to work with you regarding that past trauma, as well as give you maybe some coping mechanisms for the anxiety that you're feeling currently to hopefully make the day today a little bit easier. Um, but this is kind of an intake session, and I just want to gather some information working forward, because I do want to be mindful of our time together, and I appreciate your willingness to share your experiences. I also believe that if you'd like to continue working with me, that we may be able to address a lot of that trauma and work on that anxiety you feel while driving. Um, this will be a long and difficult process that will require a lot of difficult work. But you have enough strength to take the first steps, as seen by you seeking out counseling, um, which leads me to believe that we're able to tackle this together. So with all that being said, would you like to schedule another session with me?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think it would be helpful.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And, you know, I know we haven't dug in too deep, but hopefully we know like a good direction to go toward and what to talk about in the future. Um, and with that being said, um, I will be in touch with you, and we will schedule another session together.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, sounds good. I hope you have a good rest of your day, Shane.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much.